The full moon is now clear, but the fandom is uncertain as to whether or not the ship we've sought will reach its final curtain.
It's a good day to die! Who am I kidding? We've still got half a season left. Here's 10 things I loved
and hated
about Helluva Boss Season 2, Episode 8, The Full Moon. You all know the drill by now. I've got playlists for both my Helluva Boss and Has-Been Hotel vids in the description, just in case this 20 minutes of madness wasn't enough for you. And if you have any choice words for my thoughts on this episode, the comments are always open if you want to vocalize. But for now, let's prepare our fragile souls for a total eclipse of two hearts. Number 1. Okay, episode. That's how you want to do things? Not even gonna bother warming us up first and just going straight for a tombstone into the emotional asphalt? Alright, I can play your game.
Give me that control.
When I See Him Tonight is absolute peak. While not as musically masterful as You Will Be Okay, or as rapturously revealing as Moxie's Bad Trip, the dynamic back and forth nature mixed with a fantastic setting up of both emotional sides makes it an ideal way to begin the episode. If you've seen the whole series, you know about the individual problems that each of these guys have, and this song lays it all out like satin sheets on a ready-made bed. On one hand, you've got Stolas, who's been trapped in a life of emotional stagnation and isolation. Like I said in my circus review long ago, Stolas has had his entire existence planned from the get-go, with the majority of relationships he had being distant, abusive, or both. Heck, he basically felt more comfortable around his servants as a kid than anyone in his immediate fam. But after meeting Blitz, a beacon of freedom which beamed through the clouds of unmoving smog that his existence had been so far, Stolas finally had the inspiration to express more choice in his life little by little until he became a completely cageless bird, untethered to the straight path that he was born into, in more ways than one. This is even reinforced in the lyrics about his life being set in stone and Blitz giving him the freedom to choose. However, while Stolas was slowly becoming free, he still remained very lost in a lot of ways. Technically speaking, Blitz is the first true romantic relationship that he's forced to navigate completely on his own. No assistance from his superiors, no streamlined process, no make an egg and be done with it stipulation, just him and a potential partner. And understandably, he kinda sucks at it. He's plagued by uncertainty with every step he takes off the path he's accustomed to, and if he doesn't receive immediate confirmation that he's doing something right, he withdraws his previous actions and takes a step backward, ending up exactly where he started off and making no real progress. Even the decisions he seemed super gung-ho about at first, he backpedals from almost instantly, like his divorce for example, which took months to be made official even after his bombastic little declaration.
I'm not your boyfriend!
And where is he gonna get this confirmation? Basically nowhere. You do have Blitz, which we'll talk about later, but Stolas has no one in his immediate life that he can confide in or ask for advice. No one who's been in a boat like his before, and even if they were, they likely wouldn't want to sail with him. Heck, from what we've seen in the show, his experience with romantic interactions begins and ends with artificial dreck like soap operas, where his limited scope of romance is isolated to things like surface-level common interests and big romantic gestures without being taught the subtle things that truly make a relationship last. In his eyes, if I'm nice to him, then he will love me. Simple and straightforward, not a far cry from what he's been used to all his life. Take, for example, this scene from Oops, where Blitz lists off all the ways that Stolas tried to bond with him, like commenting on his photos and laughing at his jokes. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to support your partner like this, but this doesn't encompass everything that goes into a relationship. And Stolas, with this ill experience, doesn't understand this. There are also more subtle moments, like this bit from Amazes, where Stolas appears in a lavish display of his hot wings, only for him to quickly recoil when Blitz is not fully impressed. He probably expected some kind of starry-eyed moment from his man, where he's enraptured by his gorgeousness, but is instead slapped with a bit of realism from the dude that he was planning to dazzle. Despite having his first true taste of independence, Stolas' views on romance are as surface level as it gets. To put it simply, while Blitz has been a map throughout Stolas' life, displaying every landmark of choice one can encounter, like who your friends are, what your lot in life could be, who your partner is, and what aspects of your sexuality you can indulge in, Stolas is the one who had to make the actual trek all on his own, obviously doing a terrible job at it. And whenever he asked Blitz to double as his compass for some added guidance, like those texts we see in Western Energy, all of Blitz's responses are either open-ended, questioning, or dismissive, making Stolas assume that he did something wrong and causing him to back off because of his limited understanding of things. It's not that Stolas did anything wrong, he's being a genuinely sweet guy here. It's just that Blitz's situation is more complex than the simplistic stuff he can comprehend. In Stolas' eyes, all of these attempts to have meetups and bond with Blitz on surface level subjects are him doing his best to make this work. In his eyes, he's genuinely trying, but in reality, it's gonna take more than that to get through to Blitz. If I haven't made it obvious already, Stolas is in a very bare bones, fragile mental state right now. He is desperate for guidance on what to do because of an upbringing where everything was laid out even into adulthood, with the only person he trusts enough to give him guidance not saying a word, and his only other resources in this case not containing the depth necessary for him to fully understand what relationships entail. And when you combine his desire for immediate affirmation with the fact that, in his eyes, he's done everything he can to make this work, you know that if Blitz doesn't immediately return his feelings, it's gonna be a massive blow to him. Speaking of Blitz, he's the complete opposite. Instead of walking a fragile tightrope of uncertainty and constantly going back to the start when there's any friction, Blitz has strong emotional steel walls that have long since been put up. Blitz is at a point in his life where he can't even fathom proper intimacy anymore. He's grown this nasty internal hatred of himself over the years, where he just thinks that he makes everyone and everything around him worse. And while we haven't seen Blitz's entire back catalog of heartbreak, we've witnessed enough evidence to know that Blitz is convinced of his inability to be loved due to multiple failures in his past relationships. We have the death of his mom, which he probably blames himself for, his awful dynamic with his dad, which was transactional at best and abusive at worst, the falling out with his sister, which has yet to be resolved, his issues with Verosica, which we're likely going to see next episode, and possibly even more. As such, he's set up multiple emotional defense mechanisms that come in forms like anger, abuse, and sarcasm to prevent himself from becoming close with anyone and making them worse as a result. If Stolas is confused as to why Blitz doesn't love him, Blitz is unable to comprehend the idea that anyone could love him. It's obvious that he does hold some form of attraction for Bird Boy, but every time that his current mental state is thrown into question by something seemingly sweet that Stolas does, his traumatic side always seems to gain the upper hand, leading to Blitz dismissing it as fake and artificial and ingenuine. Though in Stolas' defense, his only reference material is artificial and fake, so it's not entirely his fault that he tends to come off that way. This is further demonstrated in the song, where Blitz decides to ignore any of Stolas' deeper questions about their relationship in favor of something more simple that he can comprehend, like the sexy stuff. Meaning that the chance of Blitz reciprocating anything deeper than a thrust is 100% going to be out the window during this meetup. Now, Blitz is not incapable of being genuine nowadays, we've seen that before, but while it's true that Blitz has been able to repair some of his friendships throughout the series, like Moxie and Fizzarolli, it didn't happen instantly. It took a complete retread of his brutalized mental state and a near-death experience where he's forced to recount one of the worst events of his life to finally crack open his defenses and allow him to be emotionally open with someone. It's not easy for this guy to be vulnerable with people, and for very understandable reasons. And when you take the guy that requires a mental war zone to find any bit of intimacy and put him with the guy who will give up on everything if he doesn't get confirmation right away, it's painfully obvious even before the ending how things are gonna go down. It's like a glass house going up against a fortified compound. This meetup doesn't stand a chance, which adds an extra layer of tragedy to the song because we know that it's not gonna end well. There are also a lot of subtle touches in the song which I really appreciate, like the fact that Stolas is singing his little heart out all throughout the song while Blitz is just sing-talking through the whole thing. Now, you could just say that Brandon Rogers didn't want to sing. I mean, the dude didn't even get to sing in Truth Seekers, they got someone else for that. But I feel like this simple choice actually adds more to the song as a whole. I'm sure a lot of musical nerds have heard the proverb about when emotions get too strong to talk, you sing, and when they get too strong for singing, you dance. Well, the fact that Stolas is singing and Blitz is talking immediately shows their differing emotional states. Stolas is fueled on pure emotional turmoil and uncertainty, while Blitz is suppressing all emotion and just focusing on the stuff that's straightforward and easy, Stolas is wearing his emotions on his sleeve, while Blitz is keeping them bottled up. In the same way that they both have their own weird worlds of misunderstanding, they also have their own unique style in their half of the song. Maybe not intentional, but another little knick-knack that makes this song extra thematic. Overall, fantastic number, great way to start things off, can't wait to see how it all goes downhill. Number 2. Could someone do me a favor and give my buckle a spin? Cause we finally have a rare Finn the Pony Theory W under our belts. For those who don't know, back in my Oops review, I predicted that the DHORK agents and the CHERUBs would eventually team up in a future episode, since they both have a common enemy and unique weapons that the IMPs might not be able to combat super easily. And what do you know? That's exactly what we got. With the DHORKs now armed to the teeth with holy weaponry thanks to the footage they nabbed in Truth Seekers, they are now ready to take the fight to Hell's home turf and thrust some religious vengeance upon the sinful heathens of the underworld. This is where the CHERUBs come in. Being just as revenge-fueled as the discount men in black, they're more than willing to enter the portal and take out the demons that wronged them, complete with some very on-the-nose but awesomely designed mech suits. While I didn't expect the CHERUBs to show up in this episode specifically, they definitely utilized them pretty well, especially when it came to the humor. I love me some well-done culture shock jokes. And what can be more shocking than a trio of heaven-born natives trying to navigate a city that treats sexual depravity like you're just picking up Funyuns at 7-Eleven? It's a beautiful setup that I wish we had gotten more of, but honestly their inclusion was worth it just for reaction shots like this. However, the CHERUBs are used for more than just the funnies, as demonstrated by number 3. Oh, Collin, my sweet little Collin. I can't wait for you to be redeemed. I've been strumming the same chord since my CHERUB review years ago, but Collin, even in his first appearance, always struck me as the black and blue sheep of the CHERUB operation. Cletus and Keenie are borderline abusive to this guy, forcing him to do all the work, feeding him to the wolves, slapping him around when he uses the Lord's name in vain. I got kinda uncomfortable watching the way that he was treated. Almost as uncomfortable as he looked when he saw his buddies saying some off-color things. But now we're getting much more visible friction between the three fallen angels, with Cletus and especially Keenie getting very bloodthirsty, while Collin just stays silent and does what he's told. He obviously doesn't want to upset his so-called friends, but he also has a moral code that's a lot more heavenly than both of them, actually believing in the cause he's a part of, instead of just using it as a facade to make himself look good and live in the lavish luxuries of his homeland. It was evident from the very start, and to see his conflicting heart more in the foreground in this episode is really awesome. They even convey Collin's differing mindset in subtle ways too. Like in this big epic shot of the trio approaching the portal in their suits, Collin is the only one who has his mask up, allowing us to see his face and read the most emotion. This shows that while Cletus and Keenie are laser focused on their revenge, Collin is still questioning the means through which they're going about this and is not as on board with the mission as the others. Even when they finally start fighting our favorite murderous motley crew, you can see that Collin is pretty skittish when it comes to firing a shot, as if he's saying, "Am I really going to heaven for this, or am I going to end up in hell? I mean, technically I'm already in hell, but what if I'm stuck here forever? Is it a sin to kill a sinner? Is this an act of justice because it just is? What's the furry community gonna say when I kill their goth waifu? Somebody please stop me!" Oh, thank you. I've been invested in this innocent hunk of fluff since he was a twinkle in the wider canon, and I'm super excited to see him pull the wool over the eyes of his cohorts one day and move over to the true side of good. At least I hope that's what happens.
If you turn this poor child into lamb chops, there will be riots, and I will be leading all of them at the same time.
Number 4. Even when you take the CHERUBs out of the equation, the main middle section of the episode, Blitz's shopping spree, is pretty fun too. When it comes to audience perspective, the Lust Ring has mostly been designated to high-end locales and nothing else. Exclusively places like Ozzy's house and factory and club with little variation. But this episode gives us a chance to just casually stroll through the streets and go window shopping with the boss man, giving us a nice view of the casual life around the ring and even the different breeds of locales that frequent the place, like this hairy candle peddler and this literally horny spider dude. We even get to see him pop by Ozzy's workshop for a cordial little visit with Fizz, and I am so freaking happy they included this scene. Just the casual banter between the duo, calling each other buddy and even fist bumping before they depart, it's just, this is my good food right here. It's so nice to see Blitz have a nice, healthy friendship after all the pain he's been through. It's also nice to see characters just hang out and be pals. Heck, that's why I enjoyed Hell's Bells so much. While I like the massive story reveals and plot developments, it's sometimes nice to just see characters be characters without any need for upping the stakes. Yeah, we had episodes like Unhappy Campers, which was okay, but even that had the big reveal of Barbie and the massive climactic finish. In more ways than one. But things like this subplot in the previous short don't really have anything. No reveals, no drama, not even much of an objective. Just goofing around while building character. And it just makes me so happy. Speaking of happy, can I just say how nice it is to see Blitz be in good spirits for a while? I mean, Fizz friendship aside, this guy's just having a ball throughout the entire 22 minutes up until the ending. Again, I'm sure this is mostly due to his coping mechanism, trying to find a way to distract himself from being emotionally compromised, but it does feel like some of this joy is actually genuine. It feels like in some ways he is happy to see Stolas, since we know that deep down he does have feelings for him. Even a few of his gestures at the various shops show that he knows to an extent what Stolas likes and dislikes, like his preference for the beads. There's small cracks in his wall for sure, but noticeable enough to show that he does love Stolas, even if he's afraid to go all in at the moment. Bottom line, I just want more Helluva Boss moments like these. And maybe a full Blitz and Fizzarolli short if they can manage it. Retirement looks great on my dude. And so do those pants. Speaking of which, mind cluing me in on where you got him, Fizzy? I'm asking for a friend. And the friend is me, I really want those. Number 5. Anyone who's seen my HB reviews know that I kinda had a bone to pick with the show's balance of setup and payoff. I feel like it leaned way too far in the former's direction, by establishing an overabundance of stuff and never really seeing it all through. Luckily, both Oops and Mammon's magnificent macaroni muscle mass, or whatever it was called, quelled my fears when it came to the team revisiting old ideas. And this episode absolutely slaughtered them. There is so much to look forward to during this half of the season, and this episode set it up masterfully. First, we've got the obvious stuff, like the CHERUBs and DHORKs returning for a second go-round. Like, it's obvious that this won't be the only time these characters return this season, right? They've got a full evangelist army and an infernal portal, which may be pint-sized at the moment, but is still in full working order. There's no way they're not going to utilize that in a big way before the season concludes. Heck, maybe the reason these red-hooded demons are planning to arrest the IMPs is because they let Hell's existence slip to the human public. And of course, whatever time isn't taken up by chunky status quo changes can be given to our two main lovers and their journeys of self-reparation, making an effort to fix their own deep-rooted personal problems before they even consider trying to make things work with one another. And I am all for it. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about that part yet, did I? Well, better late than never, I guess. Number 6. Look, much like Stella after the divorce, there's a lot to unpack here. And before we get started on that, I'll make my opinion loud and clear. This ending is hard to watch, but beautifully constructed. And while objectively speaking some decisions were better than others, I found myself sympathizing with both sides for various reasons. Let's start with what Stolas did during this little meetup. He asks Blitz for the book back in a very professional way, turns down his attempts at intercourse, and presents him with the Asmodean crystal, telling him that he no longer has any obligation to see him again. Stolas wants Blitz to interact with him not because he has to, but because he wants to. Cause Lucifer knows he'd definitely like to know him better. But when Blitz's defense mechanism kicks in and turns it into a joke, Stolas immediately walks away from the situation without giving Blitz a chance to explain himself. And when Blitz gets understandably mad at the situation, Stolas asks how Blitz could possibly think so little of him and kicks him out before he had the chance to apologize. Now on the surface, this is dumb. Stolas chose to pop this very important emotional question, this borderline marriage proposal, diamond and all, on the one specific day that the duo have scheduled for sex and nothing else. That is what Blitz is mentally prepared for. That is what he assumes this is going to be about. And yet Stolas immediately turns him away, denying him the chance to explain himself after one misunderstanding, and then kicks him out when he gets reasonably frustrated at how fast things are going. There's so much he could have done differently here. Like for one, scheduling this bombshell of a discussion on a different day when the mood was neutral and the scent of lust wasn't permeating the air. From the eyes of someone looking in, this was such an easy thing to fix. But just like I did at the very beginning, we need to understand things from Stolas' perspective. This poor guy is still very lost and unguided when it comes to relationships, prone to returning to square one if he doesn't get immediate affirmation that he's doing a good job. And with only superficial guiding tools to teach him what relationships are all about, he's developed a very one-dimensional mentality of, if I am kind to him, he will love me. To any normal person, that's a ludicrous image of how romance works, but Stolas can only rely on what resources he has access to. In Stolas' eyes, he's already done everything he can to try and convince Blitz that he's not all about sex anymore. He asked him questions about his personal life, he tried to set up get-togethers to meet up casually, he showed interest in his sense of humor and personal likes, and he showed up on time when his presence was requested for a date. He believes that he's trying his best, but Blitz's responses never display positivity, and instead apathy or dismissal, which in Stolas' head is not how this is supposed to work. He always retracts immediately because he has no idea what the problem is, and it never occurs to him that maybe Blitz is doing these things for deeper, more personal reasons. Responses like these do not compute to stolasromance.exe. This is why Stolas' response to Blitz not taking the crystal proposal seriously is something I can't entirely blame him for. He believes that the simple act of severing the deal alongside everything else he's done to prove himself will be enough for Blitz to realize that he's not just in it for pleasure anymore, that the statement Blitz made before departing in Aussies is clearly not true. And when Stolas doesn't get the immediate affirmation he needs after his biggest gesture of kindness yet, he does what he always does and walks away, failing to understand that Blitz's sarcasm is his own way of coping with the fact that he doesn't believe he can be loved. And then, when Blitz angrily accuses him of being a pompous, shallow jerk like all the other royals in his social sphere, the guy who kick-started the big journey for freedom in his life now saying that he's just another feathered monarch even after all he's done, it hurt. All these strides that he thinks he made to become a better man free of what he was assigned to be didn't mean anything. The person whose feedback he trusts the most sees him as dirt, so that must be what he is. Stolas just doesn't get that the problems with their relationship run much deeper than a simple deal. The fact that they're in a toxic agreement is not the only issue. The problem is that they're on complete opposite planes of existence where they both fail to understand the other on a deeper level. Not through lack of trying, but just due to past issues that have shaped them differently. Stolas' understanding of love is too shallow, and Blitz's scars from his past bonds run too deep, making them polar opposite forces that are just incompatible at the moment. Even the fact that he chose to do this during the full moon, while stupid to us watching at home, does make sense from his perspective. He has tried multiple times to set up meetings on days besides their usual coitus encounter, but when Blitz doesn't respond in the way he expects, he retracts out of fear and genuine confusion of what he did. Objectively speaking, he could have been more firm and direct with setting up a meeting between the two, but as easy as it would be for me to say, "Dude, grow a pair and take initiative in your relationship," I've never been in Stolas' position before, so I can't really understand how hard it must be for him. All I can do is infer based on what we're shown on screen. I don't know, maybe I'm giving Stolas too much credit, but I can't possibly blame him too harshly based on what I've seen in the show. Then you have Blitz, who had a ton of defenders claiming that his outrage was completely understandable, and I agree. Like I said before, Stolas sprung this news on him at the worst possible time and didn't give him a moment to process his emotions before shutting the door in his face and walking away. Because of Blitz's past trauma, the guy is unable to process tender feelings meant for him immediately. From Blitz's point of view, those romantic gestures that Stolas believed were genuine attempts at building a connection are just seen as artificial fakery to Blitz, and he only sees their connection as sex and nothing else, mainly because it's something that actually makes sense to him. Like I mentioned, we do see an interesting bit of crossing streams with Blitz, where he does show that he cares for Stolas by trying to make their sleep sesh as special as possible, kind of like his way of showing affection through a lens that makes sense to him. We even hear him say a line about wanting to be better in regards to screwing Stolas. On the surface, he seems to be talking about not being good enough in bed, but we all know that this is him projecting a deep-seated insecurity about he himself not being good enough in general. But when presented with pure unfiltered love with no ropes or whips attached, he initially resorts back to his defense mechanism, which drives Stolas away. And this leads to him airing out all his dirty laundry in a fit of rage, letting all his trauma loose on a guy that he assumed was just stringing him along the whole time, which he has every reason to believe based on his mental state. Small scale gestures are not going to be enough to convince a guy like Blitz that you truly care. His barriers are too high. Stuff like that is just going to bounce right off. Blitz's pain is much deeper and more complex than something Stolas would have seen in one of his little rom-coms. You can't just slap a ring on your traumatized deaf buddy, give him a new car, and say, "Will you marry me?" That's not how real life works. Blitz needs patience and time to fully get the picture, two things that unfortunately Stolas doesn't give him. We also hear some of Blitz's class-based opinions as well, claiming that royals are all the same, treating the lower class like they're puny or not as important. This likely stems from his upbringing as an imp in poverty. Maybe there are some beliefs his dad instilled in him, and we've even seen a few tertiary experiences, like how Mammon, who is also upper class, abused his best friend to the point of causing him mental breakdowns and crushing his self-worth. And while Stolas is making attempts to be genuine in his own skittish, simplistic way, he hasn't given Blitz any major reason to believe that their relationship was anything more than one class using their privilege over another until today. But my favorite part about Blitz's role in this scene is not the "be better" line or the rant, it's actually the very ending. After Stolas delivers his line about Blitz thinking so low of him, we see that Blitz's immediate response is to apologize to him, but Stolas kicks him out before he can finish. Remember how I said that it used to take Blitz trudging through hell and high water in order to open up to anyone? Well, I like to think that this scene actually shows improvement on his part, as he seemed to be initiating a genuine conversation without any major coaxing. All it took for him to try and open up this time was the simple fact that he knew he hurt Stolas. This shows that while his mechanisms are still in place, his walls are starting to lower. He is making progress. I just hope that all that progress wasn't just reset after Stolas rejected him. That would really suck. In addition to the character study and themes, you really gotta give it up to the aesthetics of this scene too. The visuals are bleak, gloomy, and packed with symbolism, like the way Stolas placed thin translucent curtains over all his pictures, similar to Blitz crossing himself out of the group photos he's in. But notice I said similar, cause it's not the same thing. Stolas' curtains illustrate that his views of relationships are obscured, blurry, and not fully distinguishable, showing his lack of self-confidence and confusion as to whether or not he's even doing the right thing. While Blitz's gruff, abrasive black markings represent not confusion, but confirmation. He is certain without a doubt that any relationships with him are doomed to fail, and it'd be better for everyone if he weren't in any at all. They're both comparable in their misunderstanding of how love works, but not identical. Also, that room they're having their breakup in. That looks familiar, don't it? There's also the use of color, which is masterful in this ending. The blending of purples and reds to represent Stolas and Blitz, with different colors gaining dominance over the backgrounds depending on whose turn it is to vent, like the hallways mainly being purple during Stolas' grief, and bright red shining through the windows during Blitz's rant, all ending with the screen being almost completely red outside once the breakup happens, showing that Blitz is now entirely on his own. So subtle, yet so impactful. And the sound, jeez man, the sound. Not only is the music during the beginning of their meeting gorgeous as always, but the fact that it cuts out during Blitz's rant, allowing us to just hear the pure, unfiltered anger he's unleashing is excellent. And the rant itself once again shows just how stellar and versatile Brandon Rogers is in the voice booth, managing to be both a total riot and a total riot within the same episode and doing them both flawlessly. Bryce did a great job as well, but Brandon just stole the show here. It is his show to steal after all, he is the titular Helluva Boss. Overall, this ending was a complete and total mess in the best way possible. Objectively speaking, both of these bros did some pretty awful things, Stolas maybe a little more so. He could have scheduled a better time for such a reveal and could have been more patient in hearing Blitz out. And Blitz didn't have to yell in Stolas' face and could have handled things calmly. I'm not using this video to say that their actions are justified. I'm just giving kudos to a team that has successfully written two real people whose motivations and problems are understandable. These guys with their current problems are just completely incompatible at the moment, both lacking in emotional understanding but in polar opposite ways, cut from a similar cloth but sewn in different patterns. And I want to see them get better, I want to see them both improve. They do deserve to be called out for their actions, but they also deserve to be heard out because of their circumstances. And when you pair the dialogue and themes with fantastic visual features that set the scene, you have what is easily one of my favorite moments in all of Helluva Boss. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Number 7.
If someone wants to see you less and less, big red flag.
Oh my god, it talks! Seriously though, welcome back to the show, Erica Lindbeck. It's a pleasure to hear you back in the cast again. Number 1. As much as I enjoyed the winged babes and their hellish escapades, there is definitely that lingering thought in the back of my brain which kinda hoped that they would've just gotten their own separate story. I mean, this is not only a pivotal chapter in the Stolitz relationship, but also our first return to Helluva Boss in, what, almost a year now? And with the song being released early at conventions and all the hype building around how things will turn out for these two, I'll admit I was kind of disappointed that only about 10 minutes out of 23 was dedicated purely to the pair. Honestly, considering this was sort of a soft return for the series, maybe they could have made this a quasi-recap episode with Blitz getting half the runtime and Stolas getting the other half. We could see Blitz go shopping through the lust rings, similar to what we saw in the episode already, and Stolas could maybe spend some time flipping through photos and looking back at his past experiences with Blitz, some we've seen throughout the series and some which are brand new. It would not only be a great reminder of how much this relationship means to him, but also to us. I'm not saying to use recycled clips from the other episodes, Truth Seekers already beat you to that, but maybe show some iconic moments in the series in a new light. Maybe with some added detail on how Stolas was feeling behind the scenes, like a more fleshed out version of those texts from Western Energy. You could even give Blitz some recollection moments of his own while walking between shops, giving us more of his deeper perspective on certain episodes. Maybe it's not the most ideal choice, but there was still a part of me that would have liked to see more Stolitz in our supposedly Stolitz-centric episode. Number 2. This is coming from the guy who adores the fight scenes throughout the series, but I personally wasn't really feeling the Cherub versus IMP battle in this one. First of all, there was literally zero setup and anticipation to be found, as IMP just appeared out of nowhere claiming that they were trailing their boss the whole time. I thought Luna bailed on her daddy and Moxie was back at the office doing paperwork. When did they start following Blitz? A few hints at their presence in the background or something would have been nice. Or heck, maybe just don't include the IMPs at all. Maybe have the Cherubs do themselves in comedically due to how unprepared they are. Or maybe have Blitz accidentally take them out in a Looney Tunes fashion, similar to the cartoony tone of their first appearance. There were definitely better ways of doing this instead of just saying the IMPs were there the whole time. Second, the choreography had some standout moments, like Collin just melting this column with machine gun fire, and Luna blowing up this hotel with a rocket, allowing Eminem to land perfectly in the jacuzzi, but other than that, it's not quite as standout as the show's other iconic fights. Like how Truth Seekers battle was a 4-on-400 fight with isolated scenes showing off each character's strengths. Or the X's and O's fight where every single kill was unique, and Millie was being extraordinarily brutal in an attempt to save her husband. Here I'm just thinking, yeah, that was pretty fun, mechs are cool and all, but I'd much rather go back to Blitz just chilling in the lust ring. Again, it's not necessarily a bad scene, it's just that this one definitely felt the most like having a fight just to have a fight, while the other fights in the show are a lot more thematic and show more character. The most that we got from this is that the Dork's arsenal must be pretty powerful if only 3 pieces of their equipment were this difficult to take down, which shows how much of a threat they'll likely be later on. But that's about it. We do learn about one of the agent's kinks though, so hey, good for them. Number 3.
Insert obligatory statement where Helluva Boss critic hates on the humor of the show.
Yeah, now you guys know I'm not like that. I get the thematic purpose of all the sex jokes. We already talked about Blitz and how he's focusing hardcore on the kinky stuff since it's something that's easy for him to understand. Makes total sense for the story. Doesn't mean I was laughing super hard though. There were moments like the Cherubs being out of place, Moxie's reaction to Blitz's colorful language, and Cletus just getting his face smashed into the desk when he tries to act cute, but other than that, it's one of the lesser funny Season 2 outings in my eyes. Not really much of a hate, and more of a meh, I guess, but there were definitely more misses than hits in the joke department this time around. Alright, so that's 7 love points and 3 hate points, bringing my first impression score to a 7 out of 10. A few points shy of a masterpiece, but definitely containing masterpiece elements in it, mainly the beginning and the ending portions. Season 2 is definitely off to a good start, and plenty has been set up for future developments. But until we get sent on an apology tour this month, tell me what you guys think. Do you think this episode was a triumph from start to finish? Or were you only interested in the start and finish? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.